Welcome to Jung Journal, a space where we explore the inner world through the lens of psychoanalysis and the philosophy of self-awareness. Have you ever felt like there's a part of you living your life for you, making decisions, choosing relationships, reacting in ways you don't fully understand? That's not a coincidence. Carl Jung called it the hidden self, a part of your being that remains concealed, yet constantly active in the unconscious. In today's video, we're diving into a truth that's not easy to accept. If you don't become conscious, you will be controlled by your unconscious. And your life will pass by while you were never truly present in it. Let's begin that journey of discovery right now. 1. What is the unconscious? And why is it dangerous when forgotten? There is a part of our mind, silent yet powerful, invisible yet always present, that we call the unconscious. Carl Jung defined the unconscious as the part of the psyche that holds memories, emotions, instincts, and wounds we've repressed or forgotten. Not because they were unimportant, but because at the time we simply weren't capable of facing them. It could be a childhood fear we never named, a buried anger, repressed because we were told to be good, a dream extinguished because it was unrealistic, or a feeling dismissed because it was inappropriate to express. None of these things disappear. They simply sink deeper into the psyche, becoming part of the unconscious. The problem is this: what we are not conscious of often has the greatest power over us. Have you ever wondered why you keep ending up in the same kinds of relationships? Why certain situations trigger extreme reactions? Why, no matter how hard you try, there still feels like something is missing deep inside? The answers often don't lie in the present. They lie in the unconscious, in what hasn't yet been seen, understood, or integrated. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." We tend to blame circumstances, luck, or destiny. But the truth is, we are often being guided by the unseen parts of ourselves. Choices that seem reasonable may actually be driven by unhealed wounds. Repetitive behaviors are usually rooted in unconscious beliefs formed long ago. For example, if you were rejected as a child, you may carry a deep belief that "I'm not worthy of love." And even as an adult, you may unconsciously attract relationships where you are abandoned, as a way to validate that old belief. This is the danger of the unconscious. It is not outside of us, it is us. A part of us we don't realize we're living with. When forgotten, the unconscious does not stay quiet. It becomes an invisible rope that ties us to old patterns. It shows up in dreams, in sudden emotional outbursts, in moments of, "I don't know why I feel this way." The unconscious constantly seeks to be seen by creating inner conflicts. And if we're not willing to look at it, we will live a life controlled by it without ever realizing it. Freedom from this doesn't come from gaining more control. It comes from gaining more awareness. When we start asking questions, observing our reactions, listening to the small voices within, that's when we begin the journey of bringing light into the darkness. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the path to becoming a whole self, where we no longer avoid any part of who we are, even the weak, the flawed, or the parts we once rejected. The unconscious, after all, is not the enemy. It is a forgotten treasure, the truest part of us, waiting for our return. But to open that door, the first step is simple. Don't forget it anymore. 2. When the unconscious is in control, you live as a victim of fate. If in the previous part we explored how the unconscious is a forgotten but powerful part of the mind, this part will show us how the unconscious silently takes the wheel of our lives. Carl Jung once said, Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. At first glance, this may sound abstract, but if we look closely at our own lives, it becomes strikingly concrete. Have you ever wondered, why do I keep ending up in painful relationships? Why do I encounter the same types of people, even though they seem different on the surface? Why do I overreact in certain situations and then feel irrational? Why do I feel trapped in emotional loops I can't break, even though I've tried so hard? It's not because you're weak, and it's not because of some bad luck. It may very well be because your unconscious is driving, while you're sitting in the passenger seat believing you're in control. We think we're choosing, but often we're simply repeating. Blindly repeating old patterns from an unhealed past. For example, someone raised in a home where love was conditional, like, if you behave, mommy will love you, may grow up choosing relationships where they feel they must earn love to be valued. They may even find unconditional love boring, because they're used to emotional struggle, used to proving they're worthy to be loved. Or someone who was abandoned, physically or emotionally, may carry a deep unconscious wound. I'm not good enough for people to stay. And so, they unconsciously choose partners who tend to leave, replaying the same pain again and again. It's not that they want to suffer. It's that a wound, if never seen, will keep seeking to be relived, hoping to find resolution. But if we don't become aware of it, we only re-experience the pain, without ever healing it. This is the tragedy of a forgotten unconscious. We live, but we are not free. We choose, but we are not fully aware. We react, and later feel regret, without knowing why. All the irrational parts of human behavior are often rooted in something deeply rational within the unconscious. They are the expressions of wounds, repressed, denied, or unacknowledged, rising through our reactions, choices, and patterns. And as long as we don't see this, we will continue to live as victims of fate. But the beautiful truth is, once we become aware of this, everything can begin to change. When we observe ourselves with honesty, when we say, I keep being drawn to this kind of person because deep down, I believe I don't deserve better. That moment, the unconscious begins to become conscious. And as Jung said, that is the first step toward becoming the author of your own life. Awareness doesn't come from controlling everything. It comes from the courage to look beneath the behavior. When we become conscious of what's happening inside, we are no longer controlled by it. And when we are no longer controlled, we finally begin to live. 3. The shadow. The part of you that you deny. There are emotions we don't want to admit. There are reactions that make us feel like strangers to ourselves. And there are repeated choices that leave us wondering, why am I like this? So much of what we call irrational in life actually has its own inner logic, a logic born from the repressed depths of the psyche. Carl Jung called this the shadow. The shadow is not evil, nor is it a second self. It is simply the collection of everything we've once rejected, felt ashamed of, or deemed unacceptable within ourselves. Jealousy, vulnerability, anger, desire, fear of being hurt, even the longing for freedom or creativity we once silenced because it was unsafe or forbidden. And because it hasn't been acknowledged, the shadow retreats into the unconscious, living there quietly, but never passively. It operates silently beneath the surface, shaping how we react, how we love, how we fight, and even how we define who we are. You can see it in moments when you explode in anger for no clear reason, in the people you dislike for no good reason, only to realize later that they mirror something within you, in the fear that keeps you from expressing your true self, in the times you pretend to be strong while a silent cry inside you goes unheard. This isn't moodiness. This is your shadow speaking. And the longer it's been exiled from the conscious mind, the more intense it becomes when it rises. Like a neglected child, it doesn't know how to speak the language of reason. It speaks in emotional storms, in crises, in broken relationships, in fatigue with no clear cause. Jung once warned, "The shadow that is not integrated will appear in your life as fate." What we refuse to accept within ourselves will seek to reflect itself outward. In the people we love, the people we hate, the people we try to change. All of them are mirrors of forgotten parts of ourselves. Spiritual maturity doesn't come from becoming more perfect. It comes from the courage to face what is imperfect within. When we can say, "Yes, I have darkness too, and I'm willing to understand it," that is the first true step toward healing. Because within the shadow, there is not only pain, there is also power. There is raw instinct. There is the intuition we were once taught to suppress. There is creativity, individuality, and even the cry for freedom that we had to abandon in order to be loved, to be safe, to avoid being left behind. We don't need to erase fear or jealousy. They don't need to disappear. They just need to be seen, understood, and reintegrated as part of a whole human being. The shadow is only frightening when we refuse to look at it. But once we dare to approach it, to name it with kindness and without judgment, it becomes a doorway to the truest self. Light is not the only truth. Only when both light and shadow are accepted can we truly become whole. And that, Jung said, is the return to wholeness. 4. To understand yourself is to bring the light of awareness into the darkness. Not everyone is able to see the shadow within themselves. But those who are brave enough to do so open the first door to the deepest form of consciousness. Carl Jung called this journey individuation, a lifelong process through which you gradually become yourself, not based on how others define you, but based on the truest essence within. Individuation is not self-improvement in the modern sense. It's not just about enhancing skills, achieving goals, or gaining more knowledge. It is the journey of reconnecting with the parts of yourself that were once cut off, and from that, forming a unified, whole, and deeply rooted self. To begin this journey, you don't need to know everything about psychology. You only need to start with one simple act: observation. Observe your emotions. Observe your reactions. Observe your dreams. Observe the conflicts that keep repeating. You feel anger? Ask, "What am I trying to protect?" You feel sadness? Ask, "What part of me is grieving?" You have a strange dream? Write it down. It might be your unconscious, trying to send a message to your awareness. Each of these small moments is the first light you shine into the darkness. There's no need to rush. No need to analyze everything. All you need is a true, kind, and non-judgmental presence for yourself. Because the shadow does not fear the light. It only fears being forgotten. And when you begin to dialogue with the darkness instead of rejecting it, you'll slowly notice that you no longer act unconsciously. You are no longer entirely ruled by your emotions. You begin to find a pause, a space in which you can choose, rather than be swept away. That is when awareness is born. Jung never promised a gentle journey. On the contrary, he emphasized that self-understanding is a challenging process, because it requires you to strip away layers of ego, to question everything you once believed was you, in order to touch something more real, more alive, sometimes weak, sometimes conflicted, but utterly honest. Healing doesn't come from repeating positive affirmations. It comes from having the courage to step into the gray areas of yourself and to stay there, not to punish, but to understand, to love. The deeper you go into this journey, the more you realize. Those who once hurt you, they too were being driven by their unconscious. And you no longer need to carry resentment, because now you are no longer a victim. You are the navigator. Not the kind of navigator who controls everything, but one who lives mindfully, where you have the power to choose how to respond, how to love, how to say no, how to stay, how to leave. This is a quiet kind of freedom, but a profound one. And gradually, as you learn to observe yourself with compassion, your relationships begin to change. You no longer expect others to fill your emptiness. You begin to relate from a place of inner fullness, without fear, without neediness. To understand yourself is, in truth, to bring the light of consciousness into every hidden corner. There is no perfect version of you waiting at the end of this road. There is only you, becoming more honest, more whole, and more gentle each time you choose to look inward instead of outward. 5. When you don't understand yourself, you'll be controlled by yourself for life. When the parts of us we don't fully understand continue to operate beneath the surface, then, no matter how much changes externally, life keeps repeating the same patterns: chaos, confusion, and a deep, unnamed emptiness. A toxic relationship ends, only for us to enter another just like it. A draining job is left behind, only to be replaced by another path that suffocates us the same way. Unfinished dreams, recurring crises, emotional cycles that keep spinning. None of these are random. They stem from the parts within us that we've never truly faced. Carl Jung didn't speak much about success. He didn't teach how to control the outside world. What he devoted his life to was a different path. The path of turning inward to understand and reconcile with oneself. Because when you don't understand yourself, you will be ruled by yourself for the rest of your life. It's not others who make us suffer. It's our unhealed wounds that dictate how we react. It's not society that forces us to live in exhaustion. It's our unconscious beliefs that push us to please everyone. It's not someone else who makes us feel meaningless. It's the unnamed part of our being, longing to come alive. Jung said, "Freedom does not come from controlling the world, but from understanding your inner world." When we begin to recognize parts of our unconscious, the shadow, repeated emotional patterns, invisible defense mechanisms, we start to free ourselves from being the victim of life. We no longer try to fix others, fix our circumstances, or force everything to go our way. Instead, we ask ourselves, what am I carrying that makes me feel this way? And from that question, behavior changes. Not because we're forcing it, but because it begins from understanding. To understand yourself is to listen to the inner voice, even when it's small, unclear, or has long been ignored. To understand yourself is to name the pain and accept the truth, even when it's not beautiful. To understand yourself is to no longer play a role, but to live in alignment with the part of you that is most alive in each moment. When we understand ourselves, we no longer chase others' expectations. Because we realize, I no longer need anyone to define me. We no longer need love to feel worthy. We no longer need achievement to feel enough. We no longer need to exhaust ourselves trying to fit in. And that is freedom. Not loud, not flashy, but deeply powerful. The power of someone who knows who they are and accepts it fully. Carl Jung never called us to change the world. He simply asked one quiet, weighty question. Do you dare to look within and begin with yourself? If the answer is yes, then that is already the first step of transformation. Because when someone is brave enough to truly understand themselves, the world through their eyes begins to change too. Everything feels lighter, clearer, not because the world is different, but because their inner lens has shifted. And perhaps that is the deepest way to change the world. Thank you for staying with Carl Jung Journal until the very end. We hope today's video has offered you a new perspective on the hidden self, the invisible yet powerful part of you that may be living your life in your place each day. When you begin to notice, observe, and understand yourself, you are no longer just a passenger swept along by fate. You become the conscious navigator of your life, with true awareness and freedom. If you found value in this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to continue the journey of inner exploration with us. See you in the next video, where the light of awareness continues to grow, little by little. From Carl Jung Journal, goodbye and thank you.